Unboxing TNT, a podcast that unpacks contemporary national issues and advocates for more effective representation and innovative solutions related to those challenges facing all of us. Tune in for fact-driven insights and stakeholder perspectives, and learn how you can do your part to make a real difference. Subscribe on YouTube and follow on social media for updates. Now, let's get started with this episode of Unboxing TNT with your hosts, Anarian Mason and Rudolph Hanamji.
Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Unboxing T&T. I'm Rudolph Hanamji, CEO here at Our Part, the portal for accountability and representation for Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm so happy to be joined once again by my wonderful co-host, Anarian Mason, our COO. Anarian, welcome to episode 3.
And thank you, Rudolph. And as always, I would remind our viewers on YouTube and those who are following along on social media to hit that like and subscribe button and follow along because data shows that 90% of you all who view the videos are not subscribed. So let's fix that. Rudolph,
Amen.
I see today you have a very interesting background. Can you elaborate what that looks like?
Well, you're probably only seeing a bit of it.
All right.
This was a magical moment I captured on my way to Charlottesville, which is my favorite end of Tobago, where an egret and a cow, so the egret is there and cow is there, they were having a moment, Anarian. They were probably sharing some fables about humans and how nonsensical we can be at times, and discussing their last week's activities. So I found it was very interesting, uh, and I snapped it just in time before they both
All
looked
right.
at me, uh, in a very condescending manner, as if to say, what happened, you've never seen an egret and a cow having a conversation before? So
Well,
that's my backdrop. What about
interest,
yours?
Interestingly enough, before we dive into
Mhm.
mine, I
Yes.
remember back in secondary school, my biology teacher teaching us about different types of relationships.
Uh-huh.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, please, Mr. Mohammed, if you're looking at this, don't come for me. The egrets and cows have a symbiotic relationship, I believe, where
That
one
is true.
one helps the other. The cow provides, transportation. They provide safety, whilst the egret takes the ticks and parasites off of them. And that they were
That
probably
is
discussing that.
very true. And that's an interesting reflection on the on other animals in our ecosystem, because of course human beings, whether we like to admit it or not, we are animals. But
Correct.
many times we put that in a box, and all the other animals continue to operate within their designated roles and functions.
Right.
And they do their part to ensure that things connect and flow as they are supposed to. So, Anarin, we are hoping that through interventions such as Unboxing TNT, we can encourage human animals to do their part, no?
Correct. Well, I digressed on your question very shortly there. So behind me, you will see pineapples. La piña for the Venezuelan and the Spanish lovers. The reason I chose this image, Rudolph, is that Trinidad and Tobago down in Maruga, they create the
Uh-huh.
sweetbread pineapple. I think it's sweetbread, I believe
Yes.
is the proper name
Yes,
for it.
yes, that's what it's called.
And it is the sweetest pineapple in Trinidad, and it actually in the world on the
I
scales
knew
that
it
they
was
have measured.
very sweet. I didn't know it was the sweetest, but okay.
It is the sweetest pineapple, and we produce that right here in Trinidad and Tobago. So we do have amazing flora and fauna and agriculture things taking place here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I'm so proud of our farmers and those who have toiled in the vineyards over the many decades to really, in the face of so many challenges, and Arian,
Right,
maintain our agricultural sector. And we all know that there is so much more to be done and should be done for farmers. But our farmers have taken Trinidad and Tobago to international markets. I mean, our peppers, for example, are exported around the globe. And I'm sure
right.
many other commodities and some of the agro processed items that are produced are also taking the world by storm, because we do have some fantastic produce and products that have come out of Trinidad and Tobago.
Of course we do. And maybe we can look at that unboxing agriculture and agro processing at a later episode as a new source of foreign exchange in Trinidad and Tobago.
I'm game.
All right. So, our topic today, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, is none other than the disasters of flooding in across Trinidad and Tobago. And here at Unboxing TNT, you know we like to take a multi-layered approach at a specific topic. And we're going to have, it's not something that has been occurring only today and yesterday, but it has been
Correct.
taken occurring for some years now, maybe decades. Rudolph, what
That
are your
is,
thoughts?
that is, I mean, as you were talking it through, it hit me that oftentimes these challenges in front of our eyes in the present are not new. And you are so correct. I mean, growing up as a child, in our very first issue of this podcast, we spoke about flooding because it was happening in July.
Right.
And interestingly enough, the Guardian newspaper in 2022 carried an article entitled Trinidad's History of Floods, and they were able to pull from the National Archives, Anarian, a
Uh-huh.
photograph from 1949
That's even
where
before independence.
correct is right. And imagine since then the capital had to come to a standstill, as the photograph shows, both public and private transportation. This is down at the end of South Key there. So you're right, this is not a new phenomenon, but it is one that we have had to continuously tend to year after year, month after month.
Right. And I see a guy there. You're showing a guy who's arguing. Look, that house is like 30-40% covered underwater.
It's so sad. I mean, we some of us are not directly impacted by flooding. I know you and I discussed that again in the episode that I mentioned earlier. Uh, but people deal with this on a daily basis sometimes, because even after the flood is gone, they have to
Right.
now pick up all the pieces. And look at this. This is not damage that you can solve in a few days. This is a long-standing impact on somebody's life, and Aryan. I mean,
Of course. Of course. Of course. And I think through the years, we have noticed that, the flooding takes place in certain areas. And if you would show our viewers this here, Rudolph, there's three images here that shows the top image shows the year 1993 with very few little flood prone areas. This was in preparedness for the wet season, showing areas that may
wow,
have potential floods. And then if you look at the second image on it, it shows that there's an increase, not significant, but a noticeable increase of areas that need to be prepared for flooding. And finally, if you look at the 2024 wet season flood potential image, we barely have green on this, Rudolph. The country, nearly the whole country is under flood.
Well, the parts that are still green, of course, are the more mountainous areas of
Correct,
Trinidad, the ranges. But
correct.
you can so easily see that the natural topography, the relief of the country allows the waters to enter and exit in certain coastal areas. But then the water obviously is seeping further and further inland and doesn't
Well,
have a runoff to go to. So obviously it's going to collect.
well, that begs me, it gets me thinking and wondering whether it is urbanization and urban development has led to something like this happening, because from 93 to 2024, we have had so much of development taking place here in Trinidad and Tobago, with
That is
new
true.
high-rise buildings, new residential areas, malls going up here and there. And it's interesting to see that whilst we are moving forward with regards to infrastructure, we are also moving forward to areas prone to flooding.
No, that is certainly true. And there are four main types of flooding. You have the floods that are taking place, of course, in the ravines and the coastal areas.
Right.
But to your point, the flash and urban flooding is happening where there has been a lot more industrial development, residential development, commercial enterprise because of the infrastructure that is being placed within the natural ecosystem. So, ravine and coastal flooding is part and parcel of the natural ecosystem and the way that the country would have eroded over time and where water, fresh water, has found its way to the ocean, etc. But
Right.
you're very right. The instances of flash and urban flooding are the ones that are increasing in number and frequency over time.
Right. You know, they say when rain fall and you see the Carry River rising, it's not to go north, it's to go south. You find yourself home.
Yes,
That's
certainly. And we remember that in 2018.
correct. But as a southerner in Trinidad and Tobago, we always make a call to those who are in central and those who are northbound. Not northern Trinidad, and we ask,
Yes.
how does the Carry River look? Should I come up the road or should I start to look ahead home? And it's a meme. It becomes a meme, Rudolph, and it's not right. But you mentioned the different types of flooding, and I think I should touch on possible causes of flooding. So
Yes.
that being said, we have natural causes such as heavy rainfall, which we can't predict. Then there is prolonged rainfall. So, for example, the day that a couple of days ago, when before this podcast is being released, I was supposed to meet my aunt to help show her a place in San Fernando to carry her vehicle to service.
Okay.
Rudolph, rain fell for 10 minutes and I couldn't
10
leave my
minutes.
house.
10
I,
minutes.
I don't think prolonged means 10 minutes, but
Well,
for 10 minutes I
welcome to
couldn't
Trinidad and
see the
Tobago's
road.
flooding.
Yeah, I couldn't see the road, and then as the rain stopped for a short period of time, I say, all right, let me take a chance. I promised, and I'm a man of integrity. I like to keep my. I decided to go and meet her, and like I said,
Right.
10 minutes, and the drains from where I am, the one or two little embankments, little dips. It was flooded. I couldn't pass. It was halfway up my tires.
I mean, you took a chance there. And we really should encourage persons to do the opposite. And as
Of
you said,
course,
stay where you are safely if there is a risk of flood waters and you don't really want to drive through those waters. I mean, in your case, I'm sure you're familiar enough with with the road, but at
Correct.
the same time, imagine if you were in another type of environment and you had an emergency to tend to, let's say a health emergency.
Right.
How much additional anxiety and stress that places on top of you, because in a moment, in 10 minutes or a little bit more, you are
Mhm.
now in a position where you can't get
Seek
to where you
immediate help.
need to do.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know that. I mean, I remember you saying that you have never been directly impacted either, but
Correct.
I'm sure you've had friends or family that have been, and these
Of
things are not
course. Yeah.
these are not fairy tales. These things actually happen to people.
I can I can divulge some information. Last year there was some flooding in the Santa Clara area,
Yes.
and a friend of mine who lives there, they were promised relief grants from the government last
Okay.
year, July. You know, we are in August the next year, and they still haven't received anything as yet. So, other than the fact that he would have lost welding equipment because he's a contractor, he lost power tools and those things. He's still
Uh,
waiting for recompensation in that regards.
and that's his
But
livelihood.
correct. But I digress. So let's look at some of the man-made issues that causes flooding.
Yes.
Deforestation, which ties in with urbanization, as well as the improper waste disposal, illegal
Oh, yeah.
quarrying conducted by some contractors, no name shall be called, and of course, poor land use practices are some of the man-made issues that causes and contributes to the flooding situation in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, the man-made issues cause us to pause because it is irony of the highest order. It's ironic because if we are the ones that are adding to the ecosystem and creating additional risk of flooding,
Right,
then it is illogical that one could preempt it, because we we know that from 2011 to 2014 there were almost 695 independent flooding events in this country, and the government had to expend billions of dollars. This is was actually reported on floodwarnings.gov.tt's website,
right,
and that expenditure, Anarian, may have been significantly reduced if persons had not engaged in some of those man-made risk factors that you outlined,
of
such as
course,
poor land use or illegal quarrying or improper waste disposal.
right,
And the pictures that are up on the screen now are of that incident I referred to earlier, and which we spoke about on episode number 1, where in
2018.
2018 half of the country was separate from the other, and
Right,
that apparently cost more than $100 million in damage and revitalization efforts, as
right,
well as other activities to support people during that week-long debacle.
yeah,
And later on, the the years continue where every other year, as we said, every other, not year, I'm correcting myself, because I still can't believe it. It's every other day almost. You
right,
are seeing flooding across the country. And over the years since 2018, The Guardian reported that another $500 million has been spent
So, wow.
as a direct cost of flooding. And this is money at the end of the day that could be going into more productive capacity,
Of
because
course.
every dollar that is used to mitigate or to deal with flooding after the fact is a dollar that is lost for investment in education or
Oh, wow, yeah.
manufacturing or other infrastructural development. So people have to understand that there is a real cost here, not just in terms of the financial impacts, but so many other things. So, Anarin, I mean, when you look at these figures, what can don't I do does it probably go over some?
You're lost for words looking at those figures, you know.
It's mind-boggling because that is a
Well,
lot of money.
let's not take my word, but Dr. Valmiki Arjun did an interview with Business Guardian, and I'm going to quote what he said. He said, "This begs the question: is the state receiving value for money when they hire contractors to implement their flooding mitigation policies? Especially since after all these monies are being to have consistent we have consistent flooding events." End quote. And Rudolph, he's right. Who is checking into the drainage systems and implementing certain criterias and technology to help when we have these multi-conglomerate construction buildings going up, when we have new offices and new residential areas being implemented? We're supposed to have a land and settlement agency where you send your drafts to get approval. That process should include drainage system and how it's going to affect the current state of where that house is going up.
It's logical, right? And you know, Parliament and other agencies have expended time in studying what is going on in relation to flooding and flooding alleviation,
Right,
and they've actually found that a number of agencies do not effectively collaborate with each other, and there are significant breakdowns across the entire ecosystem, which includes so many variables and other stakeholders.
right.
So again, we know the solutions, but all of us have to do more of our part to get involved, be vocal, and to have an influence in how, as a nation, we treat with these issues. I mean, look at some of these images. It is heartbreaking to say the least.
It is. It really is. And ladies and gentlemen, again, viewers, followers, if you do like how the conversation is going, if you do think this is something that interests you, please remember to share it with your friends, your families. Hit that like and subscribe button. And you can even comment a topic that you may want to see us unbox here at Unboxing TNT. But Rudolph, other than finances, there are non-financial impacts that affect people when we have flooding. There is, at a very high level, let's look at it. You have lack of transportation. You have
Yes.
disruption to education, disruption to businesses, disruption to services. You also need to take into consideration persons and their mental health because, I mean, waking up or going to work and coming home and find everything you owned is underwater cannot be something that easily saturated or that is
Processed. No, yeah,
processed.
it is going to take a total mental toll and physical.
Correct. And I don't know. I really don't know how people move past that. It's like I don't know how to express it beyond that, you know. Maybe you can try to help.
I It obviously would not be easy in the least, because whether it's a residential dwelling that is impacted or a commercial enterprise, you're losing belongings, which would require you now to reinvest, to find money to replace those things, while you still have to maintain and continue life. Plus, you would have a lot of sentimental investment in some of these things that you would have
Right.
lost.
Of
There are
course.
health concerns, then people lose the ability to earn revenue, because some people, unlike others, they don't earn a salary. They can't continue to be paid when they don't show up for work. They have to stay in their house and clean and rebuild, and they're
Right.
losing income. And then they still have to find money, as I said, to replace what they've lost. So I don't know exactly how people are able to pick up the pieces, no pun intended, and move forward, but they find a way. And I think that is again where we all have to do our part, Anarian, where
Right.
in times of need, we have to come together as communities. We have to contribute where we can. We have to continue to have a lot of compassion for people.
Right.
I find myself pushing back when I hear fellow citizens, or I read them say things like, "Well, why did they build their house there?" In the moment of crisis, that is not the question that we need to be asking. We
Of
should be
course not.
asking, how can we assist? Because those are human beings and fellow citizens, and they didn't ask for the floodwaters to destroy everything they had.
An interesting tidbit here, seeing that Trinidad, most of Trinidad is old swamplands and reclaimed lands. Did you know
Yeah.
back in the early discovery back ancient time? Well, not ancient. I don't want to say ancient, but couple
Yeah.
hundred years ago, houses were built on stilts as to prevent
Correct.
flooding, so that
Yes. Yes.
maybe that is something we can look at re-implementing, because why change something that has been proven to work, right?
A few homes, even in my area, were built like that years ago. And I mean, we all drive through, well, some of us, because I know some people don't see much of Trinidad and Tobago, which is a travesty. But those of us who drive through different parts, you still see homes like that today.
Correct.
And thankfully for those people, it saves them. But again, not everybody has the resources to build like that.
Right.
And uh, what is interesting, we were talking, of course, Anarin, about the residential and commercial issues, but of course, an, a major sector that is hit when flooding occurs is the agricultural space, and we've touched on it in other spaces. And
Right.
again, it's a continuous clarion call for more to be done. And it's just one of those things that again causes me to pause, because I have to process the fact that we know so much about these issues, especially in today's world with technology and data being so readily available.
Right.
Yet you have persons like Dr. Omardath Maharaj, who's an agricultural economist,
Uh-huh.
commenting that we allow tons of produce, hours of labor, rural infrastructure, and priceless human endeavor to literally be washed down the drain every time flooding takes place. And this issue does not only impact the produce that is lost, but everything else that those inputs would have gone into. So it will have an impact on cost of food, restaurant prices. There will be
Right.
loss of earnings from truck drivers and from persons who purchase wholesale to sell in the market. So it has a direct correlation to our very food security. And that is something that people take for granted, except when they go to the grocery or the market and
And
all
they
of a
complain
sudden
about
they
prices.
complain about the price.
Correct.
So you could imagine how it feels, Anarian, for a farmer who has invested all of their energy toiling in the sun and rain to ensure these crops are growing as they should and is just waiting for the right time to reap them. And
Right.
the flooding comes along year after year and they just would lose all of their motivation. They may want to go into another sector. They may encourage their children to go into other fields of endeavor. So
Right.
we're losing all of this talent, and of course they are losing equipment, they're losing seedlings. It's and we are in a worse position to feed ourselves literally. So those sentiments really frustrate me as a citizen, and I may not be a farmer, but I partly come from a line of people who made their way in the agricultural space. Most of us do, and
Right.
all of us need to eat, and we should
Correct.
all be concerned about the food import bill. And if there is damage to local crops, which then forces us to import more than we need to, because we can't
Mhm.
replace everything. But
Right.
this is why mitigation and the proper planning and implementation of public policy is so critical. But speaking of mirages, I know you had a very engaging conversation with another Mr. Mirage.
Yes, a
He
very delightful guy.
he is the founder of the SILLS Farmers Group, and
Correct.
they have been doing some excellent work in the area of farmers development and advocacy. So let's take that in, and when we come back on the flip side, we'll unbox a few of the sentiments that you all shared with each other.
Of course. Is none other than the SILLS Farmers Association founder, Mr. Bindra Maharaj. Good afternoon, Mr. Maharaj.
Evening.
How are you today?
Very cold, very wet,
I can
but
imagine.
we are doing what we have to do.
Awesome. So tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and how you went about starting the SILLS Farmers.
About 3 years ago, a gentleman by the name of Shiva Rampasan approached me to start a group because the existing group, or the group that is recognized by the ministry to represent farmers, was not really doing it. Up to now, we're still not doing a proper job of representing farmers. So he approached me and asked me to, put myself up as a nominee for the presidency of this group.
Okay.
And that is how it started. At this point in time now, as you know, it's well known, the SILLS Farmers Support Group. We are here, we are helping farmers, we assist farmers in every which way we possibly can.
Right.
That is by trying to get, like farmers' badges. We have been in one of the initial projects that we have is that we assisted farmers who, especially in the Caroni area, who could get a 1-year badge, those who are squatting on lands and so,
Right.
or who don't have proper land tenure. And so we now have that project in hand. So you have farmers now with that 1-year badge, farmers badge, they can now get their concessions and their little disbursements and so from the ministries. Whatever subsidies are available, they can get that also.
Right.
We also have other projects. Over a year and a half now, we have started our own members farmers market, which is in Caroni.
Right.
It's doing well. We continue to do better and better. I dare say, and I challenge anyone to challenge me on this, that we have been able to keep the price of produce and vegetables down. and up to an affordable rate of, that people can get their stuff on a Saturday,
Right.
get these things at affordable prices.
Well, I mean, that is what we look forward towards, building a better and a healthier Trinidad.
Definitely.
So, again, we commend you on doing that and maintaining the prices. I assume the farmers get a profit from that low price to consumers as well.
Of course they do, because what is happening now, we don't have any middlemen.
Ah,
So the farmers,
Right.
they actually bring their produce and sell that, and they can sell it at the price they are comfortable with.
okay.
And what has happened also, COVID taught us a lot. And what happened is that we had, still have, but we have a lot of single mothers.
Right.
And what we encourage them to do is to start a little backyard garden. And they have started it. And I'm happy to say that the majority of our single mothers who have a little backyard garden are now in the market selling also.
Well, that is amazing.
Yeah.
That
And,
really is.
and they also now, I have encouraged them now, our group, look, open a little place in front of your house or
Right.
wherever you are, right? And so we have these little,
Community markets.
that's right, vegetable stores springing up all over. And that's the impressive part. But what is nice about it is that these ladies and these women are now self-sustaining with their rent or their loans,
Right.
and they're taking care of their children.
So they've become young entrepreneurs.
That's right.
Well, I mean, we love to hear it. Now, this episode, like I mentioned, is about flooding.
Yes.
And flooding has been affecting Trinidad maybe since before I was born. And the thing is about it now, it has become so much rampant over these past couple of years with climate change and things like that. Today we want to ask you the question, how does it affect farmers? How is this flooding situation, hampering or promoting, whatever it may be, affecting farmers in Trinidad?
Well, we all know what climate change is doing. We have to accept it. There are times when rain is going to fall and fall so hard in a very short space of time that this will create flash flooding. We can't get away from it. We are not unique in this country. It is happening all over the world.
Right.
But how do we, at this point in time, try to mitigate these circumstances? That's one.
Right.
And the second thing is the cause and effect.
Okay, so share with us and our viewers how, maybe as a case study or two, maybe
Sure.
a personal experience about how these unforeseen flash flooding has hampered produce or market prices.
Let's go back a bit.
Okay,
Climate change.
right.
What we're just coming out of is a very dry season.
Agreed. Very hot as well.
Very hot. Now, what was going on in the country is this. You had drought-like conditions.
Right.
So you would find that a lot of, especially coming along to the end of the dry season, a lot of farmers did not have enough water to continue watering their crops or their gardens.
Right.
A farmer has to dig his own pond in his land to help to his produce during the dry season. He uses a pump out the water, and try to wet his plants as much as possible. That sufficed for a while. But let me tell you why. The weather, it was so hot during that dry season, a lot of the surface of the soil was getting wet. The weather was so hot, by the time you wet the surface, it absorbed into the system. It never went right down. You had moisture, but not water.
I got you.
Hence the reason why the size of tomatoes was small, the size of watermelons didn't come out in the size that we wanted,
Right, agreed.
because it was a starvation or a lack of water. Now, let's go forward. The rainy season is here.
Correct.
Every newscaster who's on the Weather Channel and so will tell you, expect flash flooding and flash flooding. But when the rain falls now, right now,
Right.
it has to have a degree of absorption into the soil.
Right.
That, at this point in time, is being a bit hampered because of the difference in the weather pattern. So you're getting rain falling heavy now,
Right.
but the sun comes out right away
True. Very
and
true.
hits that soil, that little bit of moisture at the top, and dries it up right away.
So the same thing that's happening in the dry season is happening in the rainy
Right.
season.
But the rain is falling differently. Today, we had a flooding situation in Central.
I think many areas in Trinidad had
Yeah.
that.
But today, I'll tell you why we had the problem.
Okay.
This gentleman's, well, he called me, he said, Mr. Maharaj, come and see what's going on here.
Right.
Right? I went. What has happened is that his entire 5 acres of land flooded out. You know why? Somebody went and interfered with the river, the course, the water course. That's one problem.
Right.
People interfering with the water course so they can extend their land, whether it's commercial or agricultural, mostly commercial, to get more land into the riverbank.
Ah.
So that's one major problem.
Anarian, what a very engaging conversation. Again, making you think about issues and variables that don't usually come to mind immediately when you think of flooding and farming.
Correct. Correct. And Rudolph, that wasn't the whole interview. It's just a snippet. And we would like to encourage you all to look for the complete interview on our YouTube channel at our part as the handle.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts, Rudolph? How do you think? What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, in the face of many challenges, as I said earlier, our farmers are being very resilient. But as Bindra mentioned there, we have to accept that many things are changing outside of our control. And climate change, of course, is one of those important, if not the most important feature of that dynamic ecosystem.
Right.
So the way that we assist and intervene and enable farming today, agriculture today, and consider flood risks and mitigation measures has to be quickly innovated upon so that we I want to say get ahead, but I don't know if we will ever really do that. But we will have a greater fighting chance to reduce those negative externalities that result from the flooding, which is a knock-on effect, or which has been exacerbated, I should say, by climate change. So Bindra raises a very, very critical point.
Of course. And well, Rudolph, I know just like me, having a specialist interviewed, you would have done the same with a very young civil engineer. And before I ask you to share that information, I just want to refer back to Dr. Arjun again. In the very same interview he did, he went further on to ask whether the government was adhering to recommendations of the consultants and engineers it continues to hire to advise on the best mechanisms to mitigate flooding. So, Rudolph, for that little introduction, can you share with us how that conversation went with you and that engineer?
Certainly. I was so humbled to have the opportunity to sit with Akeel Mandol. When we began the discussion, I asked him right off the bat, why choose this profession? And his answer was so unassuming, but filled with passion. He said, I like to see things being built. I like to bring inputs together, plan, connect different commodities, different sciences, different approaches, and create things that have an everlasting impact on our ecosystem. And I pondered on that answer after the conversation, and that is such a, an important inflection, because if more of us took a moment to consider our actions and how they have everlasting impacts in the society, and oftentimes we don't give ourselves enough credit, and maybe that is why people don't stop and truly ponder on their actions, because they think maybe that is not really that impactful. But sometimes a small change by one individual can have a huge ripple effect, and not always for the best. Oftentimes, it can be at, at in a negative connotation, and that is exactly what is happening with flooding. So, according to Akeel, we have to remember that flooding is a function of both the rainfall intensity and the duration, which you were talking about earlier when you listed out the causes of flooding, but also what is known as the runoff coefficient. Now, like you, he's an engineer by profession, and while he tried his best to simplify it for my understanding, he had to refer to the technical term runoff coefficient. And if I'm to paraphrase how he explained it to me, it's basically the capacity for the surrounding ecosystem and infrastructure to absorb that rainfall that doesn't sit within the natural flat or surface area where it's falling. So whatever can't stay there has to move into the surrounding areas, and that amount of water that moves helps you to consider what the runoff coefficient should be. And too often he was making the point that when developments, for example, are made within a certain space, people don't take the time to consider the long-term effects of the change to the runoff coefficient that is required in the rest of the ecosystem. So they might focus on the development, they will focus within the boundaries of the piece of land that they are looking at and that they are building on, but they don't interconnect with the wider ecosystem. And as a result, the wider ecosystem simply cannot manage the level of runoff that is now entering the system. And because of that, you have this backup of water, and the water starts rising and creating the symptom that we see, which is that stagnant water that, even though it looks like in some cases that it's not moving out fast enough. So even while there's a current moving, the level of the water rises and it starts backing into people's properties and farmlands and business places, etc. And we went on to consider, therefore, Anarin, as a result of knowing how this thing comes to be, how could we allocate better to be able to mitigate it? And in many cases, he has found that the budget allocations were disproportionate. And in talking with him, an interesting point came out, which is that maybe there is the possibility that flood mitigation costs are so overestimated that it keeps getting kicked down the road like the proverbial can, because we'll say, well, we don't have the money right now, we want to use the money for other things. But then the catch 22 situation takes place. You don't invest the money now because you say you don't have it. So you don't mitigate or manage you don't mitigate the flood, and you don't manage your water better. And then the flood takes place. And as we said earlier in the cast, that flooding now has financial and non-financial impacts. And you're going to have to now find, if not the same amount, sometimes more money to deal with that. So we really have to take a more constructive and proactive look at how we address flooding. And we have to learn to listen more to the practitioners in our country, because he made the case for all of the expertise that exists in Trinidad and Tobago, both experienced and upcoming, and together we could find better ways to upgrade and expand the drainage systems. We can look at green infrastructure solutions. We can enhance the natural floodplains, and we can implement things like urban planning, zoning regulations, and of course, education and better integration with climate change adaptation strategies. So, again, we'll post the full discussion with Akeel on our YouTube channel, so that persons who have an interest in this area, and just I think generally all citizens who want to build a better TNT, can have some of their own key takeaways. Because Anarian, here at our part, we're all about creating that ripple effect
Of
through
course.
change. And if just a few more of us understood these things and could explain it to others, imagine what a positive change impact there might be in Trinidad and Tobago.
But Rudolph, that was a very insightful debrief to the interview. And yes, I think you explained the runoff coefficient quite well.
I'm glad that I met your standards, sir.
Correct. It's not very high, or is it? Because we want better accountability and representation here in Trinidad and Tobago. And Rudolph, as we draw to the close of our episode 3 on flooding, you have your part, I have my part. And what does that look like for our viewers and for our citizens? So, some of your part, work that you can do as a citizen, is to not litter and throw away anything that can plug up the waterways. So, your garbage, your old car seats, the bamboo that you cut, the old branches, those things, don't use it to plug the waterways. We ask you to be respectful to farmers and to builders in their expertise of irrigation and water management. We also ask persons to be responsible if you are undertaking construction, residential or otherwise, and to be mindful of the drainage system and the water now going to enter into that current ecosystem, whether it is we be able to handle it, whether we need to maybe drench or widen the drains, maybe go further into digging deeper. We also ask you to be assertive and be your neighbor's keeper. Do not turn a blind eye. If you see John or Sally throwing things away or doing something that may lead to flooding, call them out on it.
Yes.
Tell them that they're doing nonsense. And please be very respectful in the way you're approaching persons. That they're doing nonsense and they need to not do that, because even if it doesn't affect you up on the hills, it will affect you further down.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be through agriculture, through education, maybe the water becomes stagnant and mosquito breeds and we have a dengue outbreak at this point in time. You want to take all those things into consideration. We also ask persons to join our paths. This is a call for you to join us and support some of our
Yes.
favorite projects. Rudolph, is there any you would like to tell our viewers what they should do to take into
I
consideration?
mean, to take a page out of your book, they definitely should be sharing this video and other content that is related to flooding and mitigation, because we have to continue to enhance our awareness and influence policy and policy implementation. And to reinforce what you were getting at, while there are many other things that people have to focus on in life, because of how diverse our population is, you have varying experiences with flooding. At the same time, I would hasten to say that I think flooding has impacted all of us, and everyone can agree that it is something that must be taken seriously. So we should all inform ourselves more and use our voices, use our networks, use whatever privileges or resources that are at your fingertips to do your part to ensure that the right systems are put in place, that recommendations of the many various agencies and reports are considered in a robust manner. And we should not criticize valid execution of public policy that will assist with flooding. We should be critical of things that just don't make sense and that experts and others, such as farmers themselves, are saying categorically will not help or solve the problem. But we should encourage and support things that are beneficial. So that would be my call to action for citizens out there, because as we always say, Narayan, if you do your part, I do my part, then together we are doing our part.
All right, Rudolph. I think we've unboxed flooding at a high enough level. Maybe we can revisit and go into some other layers at another time. To our viewers out there, please remember to like and subscribe, follow along on social media for updates, and be sure to leave that comment if it is you like what we're doing, and tell us what you
Please
want to see
do.
us unbox here at on Unboxing TNT. All right, take care.
Thank you, everyone. Anarian, see you for episode 4.
Same, Rudolph, same. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, yes.